Synergy. Welcome to Synergy. Live with Synergy. Live with Synergy. This is your host, Andrea John Baptiste. Welcome to Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize.
Greetings, friends, family, colleagues, collaborators, sponsors, partners, audience, and guests. Welcome. This is Andrea John Baptiste, and you are tuned into Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize. I know it's your favorite drive time show here on WDJY 99.1. How we doing, Atlanta? Everybody good, healthy, wealthy, and wise? I sure hope so. And if you're not, you sure will be today, because you know what we're talking about on Synergy? We are talking about data and dollars. So how do you use data and information to make and or leverage those dollars? That's what we're talking about today with great industry professionals, leaders, and I know you cannot wait to get started. But before we do, I just have to give a special shout out to our friends over at gluefm.com as well. Mark and Lisa Blaze, and you all know I've been sharing with you their information because they also do some Caribbean programming on Glue FM on Fridays from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's the Gold Digger Show. And then on Saturdays, also from 7 to 9, it's Night Groove. So tune in for great interviews, tune in for fantastic new music from all around the world if you are interested in Caribbean programming on gluefm.com with Mark and Lisa Blaze. And for those of you that are tuned in already to Glue FM, hello, greetings, because I know we are simulcasted over on Glue FM here on Thursdays as well. So we thank you for Mark and Lisa for doing that. And so, as I mentioned, today on Synergy, we are talking about data and dollars. And so let's get on with our first guest, who is Phil Barry, and he is founder of Blocker. Phil, greetings, and welcome to Synergy.
Hello. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. So tell us about Blocker. And before I go on, I just want to say, folks, if you're going to look it up, because I know folks start looking things up as soon as you mention the name, it's BLOKUR. Might throw you for a loop if you're looking them up on Google. So tell us about Blocker, Phil. As a founder, what spurred your vision for Blocker, and what problem was it designed to solve? And did the MMA, the Music Modernization Act, have anything to do with this inception?
Well, Blocker is a platform that helps musicians and music companies get paid what they should when they should by making sure their rights are accurately represented. So that means that the information that says who the songwriter is, who the publisher is for the song is nice and clear and accurate, so that whenever the song is used, then the right person will get paid for it. The way it came about is, I suppose, going back in history. So I was an artist. I spent all of my childhood dreaming of being a rock star, all my playing and writing music, and I was lucky enough to spend the first 8 years of my career as a professional recording artist. And at that time, when I started out, I'd spend all day, every day writing songs, 8, 10, 12 hours a day writing songs, hoping I'd catch a break and be able to A, pay the rent, and B, pay to record my first album. And what happened was, eventually I did get some kind of break, had my song used on TV show all around the world, but I just didn't realize it was going to take me 2 years to get paid. And I saw this, repeated over and over again, working with artists on my own label that I started. Since then, done collaboration consulting for Radiohead's management, working with Imogen Heap and Massive Attack and other artists, and you see this repeated over and over again, just the amount of time it takes to get paid. And so the conclusion that I came to is that although we've had brilliant ways of distributing content and information over the last decade and a half, thanks to the online world, we haven't seen the same revolution in the way that value flows in the other direction from the consumer to the creator, and that's the part of the loop that we're trying to solve. As for MMA, well, not specifically a driver for Blocker, but it definitely is linked to the same idea, which is, just how do we accurately identify that I'm the writer of this song and I'm the one that needs to get paid when my music is played. So I'd say parallel initiatives, not necessarily one driving the other.
Right. Very cool. I mean, so personal experiences. And I can tell you, synchronizers, that listening to many of the artists here, particularly those that have been around doing good work for a very long time, payment and staying afloat is often an issue. And that's why we talk so frequently, as often as we can, with guests in the arena that will help folks to drive dollars so that they can continue to create great music. So, Phil, just because I'm nosy and because our synchronizers want to know, what instrument did you play, or do you play?
So I was a solo artist called Mr. Fogg with 2 G's. It was kind of alternative electronic pop music. I would sing and I would play whatever instrument was required in the studio.
Very cool. Now, was that, you have UK, I'm believing, a British accent. So was that here, you stateside, US, or in the UK that we can find Mr. Fogg?
Well, you can find it probably anywhere on your streaming service, but I don't necessarily recommend it. It's very obscure. But yeah, I did come to the US and make a couple of music videos, but mainly touring in Europe.
Oh, very, very, very cool. Very cool. So who are the primary consumers of Blocker?
Yeah, so right now we work with really two groups of customers. So the first one being people that own the rights, so the music publishers. So on that side, if you were to look in kind of who is in the top 10 by market share of music publishers, most of the people that show up in that list over the course of a year are working with Blocker. So we're getting up to pretty good coverage of the music industry on that side. And on the other side, it's any business that uses music. So it might be somebody that wants to use a song in a TV show or a video game or a movie, whatever it is. They can come to Blocker to find out who it is they should be going to get the license from to use the song, or if they're already using it, who they should be going to pay royalties.
Very cool. And who's missing from Blocker? Who should be using it that's not, maybe?
Well, so what we're really focused on is getting up to cover the whole market really in terms of the music publishers. So there's a few, there's last remaining publishers that haven't yet signed up to Blocker that we're keen to sign up. And then, an increasing amount on the community of the music users. I mean, we work with lots of the big music companies, so I wouldn't say there's somebody on my list that we're really desperate that I want to say on the radio right now, but we've got, we want to keep building up that community of the rights owners and the people that use music to basically make it easier for everybody to get people paid when music is used.
Absolutely. Why is data collection so important?
Well, very simply, if your song is played somewhere and nobody knows you're the songwriter of that song, then there's no way you're going to get paid for it. And data just means information. It's just the information that tells you that. And in most industries, it's quite simple. If I go to a store and buy something, I just pay on the way out. But in music, especially on the song side, people don't always know that you've got, a hit song like, say, Uptown Funk. You've got 12 songwriters in that song, and you've got all of these different contracts and music publishers and rights owners all around the world. And every time that song is played, we have to find a way of identifying all of those 12 songwriters and all of the people that work with them so that the money flows to them. So it's extremely complicated. And So we need that information to be as accurate and available as possible if we want everyone to get their right piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we must. I mean, I think this is probably one of the few industries, maybe if not the only, and you probably know better than I do, where there is such a convoluted process, so to speak, in terms of getting paid. Like you said, go into the store, purchase whatever, in your supply chain, it's kind of, you understand how that works. But in music, the supply chain is a little different.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, if I was to go to a store and buy a tin of beans or something, then like the parallel with music industry would imagine that instead of just paying your dollar and taking home your tin of beans, you'd have to say, okay, I need to send some money to the person that grew the tomatoes and the sauce, and somebody that grew the beans, and somebody that did the packaging, and someone that did the artwork. Most industries have all of that hidden from view, but in music we expose all of that, and it comes down to the fact that because songs are written between people, they're collaborations. Basically, you just have multiple people sharing the ownership of the copyright of the song, which is quite an unusual situation for most industries.
Wow. A great analogy. I like the tin of beans because I think that is true. So, talk to us about the data analysis pieces. Like, what do you collect, and how is it extrapolated? I imagine some big machines somewhere doing all kinds of things, and folks trying to stay ahead of that. Is that just in my imagination, or did I just steal that kind of from the Wizard of Oz?
Well, the amount of data we're talking about is pretty significant, because you're talking about all of the songs, and there's a lot of songs, millions and millions of songs.
And more being created every second.
More every day, exactly. Like, you've got these huge chains of information for each songwriter, where all the contracts go and everything. I'd say there's kind of two main pieces of technology at the core of Blocker that are really important. The first one is about matching. So when you see, let's say Bruno Mars, I've already used Uptown Funk as an example. So his real name is Peter Jean Hernandez, right? So imagine that you get one version of the information that says Peter Jean Hernandez and another piece of the information that says Bruno Mars. Well, you need a way of identifying that they're the same person. You need a way of identifying they're the same person so that you can match the data together, so that you can identify where there are conflicts and gaps and holes in the data, and essentially just create the most complete picture that you can. So we have some quite unique technology called subgraph matching, which applies to this to identify pseudonyms, alternative titles, and basically mashes all the data together to create the complete picture. And then once you've done that, we identify where there are errors. So there's another of these big machines that you're imagining is about identifying where there are errors and conflicts. So maybe there are two people claiming that they own the same song, for example. So this is where we identify where that's true, and then we try and come up with an answer to tell you what's most likely to be true, and allow people to work out disputes and things between them. And that's the core of identifying this kind of system of record of accurate information about who the rights owners are and who the songwriters are in a song. And then once we have that, then that's really kind of the building block. And on top of that, we do things like analyze where those songs are used in streaming services to tell you where in the chart. And that's fun because you have, for example, on the chart for Shazam, you can see where in the world your song's being played. Not so much in bars and clubs right now with everything that's going on in the world, but different types of places. You can go by city level and see where your song is most popular. So
wow.
Once you've got that.
And that's globally?
Yep. Yeah, that's
all
right.
Markets. Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing. That sounds extremely micro. And very, very, very useful. So you can use this in terms of some forecasting too, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So the idea is that, because what happens if you're an owner of a song, you get paid a long time afterwards. So say your song is being played now, you it depends on what part of the world you're in, but in Europe, if a song's been played today on the radio, you're going to get a statement sometime next year saying that you're owed some money for it. And what this does is allow you to see where in the world my music is most popular, and therefore where I'm most likely to be generating royalties. That kind of knows me where to chase, who to chase to get my money, gives me a sense of what to forecast. Yeah.
Nice. Very, very nice. Useful and informative. If you are just tuning in to Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize, we are on today as we're talking about data and dollars. And for this first half of our program, we're on with Phil Barry, who is founder of Blocker. And Phil, before we move on, tell folks how they can connect with Blocker and essentially you if they need to.
Yeah, sure. So I think you said at the top, but so Blocker is written Blokkur, and if you head to blocker.com, you'll find us there. And you can either send us a message if you need to, just click on contact to do that, or if you're someone that uses music some way or another, you can sign up straight away for a free account to search songs and find songwriters and publishers.
Excellent. Thank you. And so, a good segue into my next question in terms of involvement, right? So primarily two areas. Is it the sign-up process, the involvement different for your publishers versus the consumers? Do they get the same kinds of data?
Yes. So I guess you can see it on two sides. So the first one is if you're the rights owner, you want to make sure that your information is available, and you're basically posting the information so that people know that it's your song. And then if you're on the other side, the user of music, then you're coming and looking for the information. So one is the source of the information, and the other one is searching for the information. So that means that although the platform it's one platform and it's all unified, it has a very similar user experience, it's just slightly different experience for each person, just based on the type of thing that you need to do. Because if you're just searching for songs, you don't need to go through the process of registering songs on the platform, for example. So it's slightly different, but it's all based around the same data.
Awesome. Are there fees for the services?
So for every type of user, there is a free option, and then as time goes by, you might find yourself upgrading to something additional if you'd like to. So anybody can sign up and try it out. And especially for the core copyright aspects of Blocker, it is free for the rights owners, for the publishers. If you want to get into some of the analytics around charts and streaming service and things like that, then there's a fee. Very very good value, obviously. And on the other side, if you're a music user, as long as you're searching for, like, if imagine you're making a movie and you need to find a few songs for that, then it's free. If you need sort of massive scale automation of searching and things like this, then you'd find yourself in a paid for service.
Awesome. And so as technology is changing as rapidly as I think music is probably being created, going back to the big machines in my mind, I'm guessing you have quite a bit of a development team, and do they find themselves kind of fighting to stay or get ahead of technological changes, or is it pretty much, it is what it is?
Well, at Blocker, so we build all the technology in-house and from scratch. So we don't buy in systems or software from elsewhere. So that means that there's quite a lot of research and development that goes on. And Blocker's still a young company, 3 years old, so we're always doing something new. We're always innovating. And I suppose that the specific angle is that, Blocker, although we're operating in the music space, we are a technology company. And so it's technology that is the absolute core, and the technology should be the best it possibly can be. Whether you're trying to stay ahead or whatever, I think that we focus on what we're doing. It's very easy to get distracted. And it's also very easy to put the technology first instead of the customer and the problem. So we always start with what the customer needs, and then whatever the technology is that best solves that need, then that's what we'll build.
Wow. So customer services first, as it should be with any organization. You are tuned in to 99.1 FM WDJY Atlanta. This is Andrea John Baptiste, and we are on Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize. In today's show, we are talking about data and dollars with Phil Barry, founder of Blocker, and that's BLOKUR if you are looking to contact Blocker. Now, Phil, as we wind down, tell us, are there any emergent data trends that you're seeing over the last couple of months that may be correlated to COVID-19? They say, what is it, causation? Correlation does not mean causation, but anything that, you see trending a little bit differently, usage or anything like that?
Well, it's been really interesting to see during this period what has changed in the way that people are consuming content in general, music specifically. So I think that one of the things that was very interesting in the beginning was everyone's at home, so should they be listening to more music online? Well, actually, it turned out that in the very first weeks of this experience of the lockdown around the world, people weren't commuting to work, and it turns out that that's one of the places that people listen to a lot of music is when they're commuting to get to work. So it was actually a drop in the number of listeners. So that was interesting to see, or at least in the amount that they were listening in the beginning. Mm-hmm. The biggest impact for music is probably just in the physical world. So obviously you can't have live shows going on at the moment, and that's a big source of income, especially for artists. And in that way, you have to think not about just the big stars, but all the people that are involved in putting on the show, whether they're a backup musician, or whether they're someone doing the lighting or the sound engineering or crowd control, whatever it is. There's a whole industry there that's just totally on hold. And then also you have the use of music in bars, restaurants, nightclubs that generates royalties for the owners of music, creators of music, and that's obviously had a massive drop off. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this affects the industry as a whole. And as I mentioned before, because it takes a while for the money to flow through the system, it may be that we don't feel all of the pain right now, and the pain is some of it's felt now, especially in the touring part, but some of the income stream pain will be felt maybe even next year, later on in next year. The one thing where you see an increase is obviously in live streaming. So people doing performances online, whether it's DJ sets or concerts or playing from their own home. We've had some really big ones with big names, and then smaller ones with indie artists. And the question there is really, is there going to be a business model that generates enough income to cover the gap from the other parts? So it's kind of, it's fun and it's exciting and it's new, but there isn't a business model that would mean it suddenly makes everything brilliant for creators, even though it's very popular in terms of the consumption. So over this period, we've got to see if we can, come up with, if everything is going to be more accelerated in the move to online and digital, what can we do to come up with the business model and the way of monetization that's going to make that work? Because we don't really want to go through what we've went through before when you had drop-off from CDs and we hadn't yet come up with streaming. We had quite a long period of decline in music industry. We've got to think about, if we're having a similar movement now, how are we going to get the business model right this time?
Wow, that is a wealth of information, and I'm a data junkie. Our synchronizers know that if you give me some info, particularly the numbers on things, I will look at it and just really enjoy the revelations. And so this is a conversation that I just recently had with a concert producer and promoter who's looking at taking their concert online. And this has been an annual event, I think 5,000 people every year and so on. And the question has been about the monetization of it. We know consumption has increased, and, it's by virtue out of people, how else are you going to consume this? How else are you going to keep in touch? And from the artist's perspective, how else are you going to continue to get the information into the hands of your consumers, your fans? But to your point, Phil, my question is the monetization of it. Have we created, is it sustainable in terms of the live streaming of performances? And I'm eager to see those models or those instances where folks are able to profit from it, because I have not yet heard, though everything is new, of some of that truly happening. As one promoter said to me, the cost of streaming ain't cheap. And so that was, I think in that team's mind, from moving from all of the, the staging, lighting, and all of the different logistics and production costs, which can be very hefty, moving online, I think the anticipation was that it was going to be significantly cheaper. And I don't know what the numbers and dollars look or sound like, but the feedback was, it was eye-opening and a rude awakening. So good information today as we talk with Phil Barry of Blocker. Phil, one more time before we say our goodbyes and take our first break here on Synergy, tell folks how they can connect with Blocker for their music data needs.
Sure. So Blocker, you can reach us, either just type it into Google, BLOKUR, or head to blocker.com, and you can either send us a message or sign up right away.
Thank you, Phil of Blocker, founder of Blocker. This is Andrea John Baptiste, and you are listening to Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize. And today's show is about data and dollars. Stick and stay, and we will be right back.
If you enjoy the great music business information you get here on Synergy, then check out Music Biz Live. You'll hear from high-level executives from companies like Facebook, Spotify, Twitch, Universal Music, M-Theory, and Songtrust, as they discuss the most pressing issues the industry is facing right now. Be sure to join Music Biz Live each week, Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. Find out more at musicbizlive.org.
You're listening to Synergy Radio on WDJY 99.1 FM, where music, business, and culture synchronize.
Welcome back. And I told you that we had a fantastic show ready for you today. Yes, you are tuned into Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize on WDJY FM 99.1 right here in Atlanta. And this is Andrea John Baptiste. And we are talking today about data and dollars, right? So we just talked with our friends from Blocker about how we utilize data, and now we're going to talk with our friends from the Music Fund about how we use data to fund our music production. But before we do that and I introduce our next guest, I just want to remind you all, for those of you who've been calling the station and trying to get a hold of me, you can follow us on Instagram at Synergy Radio Show and on Twitter live at Synergy. And certainly follow and like the Facebook page for the station, WDJY-FM. There you will get all the information of the daily lineup and the various guest hosts and programming for your listening pleasure and edutainment. All righty. So we have amazing guest, co-founder, and CEO of the Music Fund, John Fonge. John, welcome, and thank you for joining us today on Synergy.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's get right into it, because you know that whenever we start talking dollars anywhere, right, the topic, it's a hot topic in any circumstances. But now, as we are emerging from, and many states are opened up, or all states have opened up from COVID-19, now's a good time to kind of reassess and look at where our dollars are, where they're coming from, how we can attain some more. So I'm really happy that you're able to join us today. Tell us about the Music Fund. How long has it been around, and who are your primary consumers?
So the Music Fund has been around since the end of 2018. We started in November 2018, so we're fairly new. We have our main consumers are independent musicians who are looking for funding to fund their careers, for example, to make a video. It used to be to go on tour, hopefully again soon, and they would like to remain independent. Although the good thing is that the offering we have is also accessible to anybody who has a revenue stream from royalties. What we do is that we offer people a way to get an upfront payment in cash on their future royalties without having to give up any copyright. And we have a bunch of other useful artist-friendly features that I'd be happy to talk about as well.
Absolutely. Wow. So talk to us, because that's a pretty innovative approach to funding, right? It's not a loan. It's not an advance. How does that royalty sales process work?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So what we're doing is we're buying a share of your royalty income for a fixed period of time. So for example, you could sell us 20% of 10 tracks for 2 years. And the reason it's not a loan is because there's no debt, because at the end of that 2 years, even if we haven't recouped the amount, suppose, for example, we gave you $10,000 for 20% of those 10 tracks for 2 years, at the end of that 2 years, you owe us nothing, even if we've only recouped, say, $9,000. So we just take the hit of the $1,000 that we didn't recoup in that case. Obviously, we're hoping that you're successful and we get to share in your success and that you do well and we end up taking 20% of, a higher amount. But there's no debt because you don't owe us anything at the end of the deal. So that's the main difference. That's why it's not a loan, and it's not an advance as well, because again, it doesn't have to be paid back. And the other thing is, many people, when they get an advance, the way it works is you have to pay back the advance first before you start to get any of your revenue. So for example, you might have to give 100% until you've paid off the advance. But with us, we're only buying that 20%. So every month or whenever your royalty income comes in, we take the 20% that we bought, but you still keep the 80%. And the other thing to bear in mind is if you're still putting out new music, because we're only buying back catalog, if you're putting out new music, then that share of your income that we're taking is actually going down over time because you're putting out new music. And so as a proportion of your total income, the amount is going down.
Wow. So let me ask, where did this concept come from? Who was the mastermind? Because I think it's amazing.
Yeah, so the idea where it came from is actually very interesting, and I should talk a little bit about our background in order to understand that. So we were actually, my co-founder Thomas Jurdy and I were working at a company called Winton before we started the Music Fund. And what Winton does is they invest in things like stocks and commodities. And the way they do that is they make a large number of small bets. So they're the opposite of Warren Buffett. You may have heard of Warren Buffett, for example, famous investor. He typically makes a small number of large bets, and he uses his skill as an investor to do that. But Winton was the opposite of that. They use data. So in line with what you were talking about, they use data and algorithms and machine learning to make a large number of small bets. And the hope they had was that they were right on average, that they were right more often than they were wrong. So that was their business model. And we were working in the research lab in San Francisco, and we ended up talking to people in the music industry, and we heard about some of the issues that artists had in terms of not having good options in terms of funding. And we sort of crossed our minds, well, could we take that approach that Winton was using in the financial markets and apply it to music funding by making a large number of small bets, so we don't have to make a lot of money on each single deal. We just hope to scale and do this at large scale and make a large number of small bets and make money on average. And that way artists get a good deal and we have a good business, and it seems like a win-win situation. So that's where the original idea came from. But obviously we weren't sure initially how artists would react to that, but we went to South by Southwest. We got into Techstars Music Accelerator, and we got just this amazing reaction from artists because they understood more than anyone how difficult it is to get funding and how limited their options are. So that's where the idea came from.
Wow. So are you receiving a plethora of applications hourly by the minute? I'm wondering because it sounds like creators would be almost clamoring for these opportunities.
Yes, we've had a lot of interest. One of the challenges we have is just getting the word out because lots of people still haven't heard of us yet. So that's why we're doing opportunities like this one are great in order to get more artists to hear about us. But we've had a lot of interest and a lot of people who are excited about what we're offering.
Well, I'm going to put a pause in the conversation just for a moment for you to do a shameless plug here on Synergy and tell folks how they can keep up with you, keep up with the Music Fund, so that more folks will be able to access the services.
Thanks. Yeah, so the main way to access the services is through our website, and everything is fully automated, so you can actually get funding without actually talking to any humans. You can talk to us, obviously, if you have questions, but you can do the whole process without speaking to anyone by going to our website, and our website is themusic, one word, .fund, so .fund. So that's sometimes that slips people up because they used to go into .com, but this is themusic.fund. And you can also search for us on Google, and you can follow us on Twitter. We're at The Music Fund.
Awesome. TheMusic.fund, folks. So if you're just tuning in, we are talking with John Fonge, CEO and co-founder, of The Music Fund, and where artists are able to sell a part of their royalties and for funding their next venture. So on the back end, John, how is the Music Fund funded? Is it private, public, investments? How are you then able to, once you've purchased these royalties, or to make the purchases rather?
Right. So we have two separate sources of funding. So we are a startup, so we have venture funding for the actual operating company and the business that pays our salaries and our expenses. But then the money that goes to musicians, that comes from a separate group of investors who are interested in investing in music. That's all. That's all hidden sort of from the artist, so the artist doesn't have to worry about that. But behind the scenes, as you say, we find investors who are interested in music as an asset class, and it's become a very interesting and appealing asset class to investors, especially with the recent in the stock market, like going up and down, lots of volatility. It's another asset class that investors are interested in, like real estate, other kind of things they could invest in. It's sort of a way to diversify their portfolios.
Very interesting. I will be very honest with you, as we've looked at various assets, music as an asset class has not crossed our minds. And so shame on me, but thank you for illuminating that matter, because John, you missed the backstory, or we haven't told a backstory yet, but there's always a backstory on Synergy. But today's, I'm going to just keep it brief. And, music, we consume so much of it. I tell folks I still go to record stores, the ones that are still around. I still purchase CDs. I mean, all of that. And so why not invest in music?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah,
so I've had an aha moment here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I think there was an article. I grew up in the UK and England, and there was an article recently about the fact that a British Rail pension fund was interested in music as an asset class, because they wanted to protect themselves from the sort of wild ups and downs of the stock market and things like that. So yeah, more and more investors are interested in it.
Well, I thank you because I've had an aha moment, and you've given me some homework, so I'm going to go do some research when after this show. So
Very cool.
let me ask now. So, as an artist is looking for these dollars, and they don't have to worry about the back end, the venture capitalists, and the other investors, which is a great thing. What are the purchases, like the rates based on? Is there a formula? And there is something I saw on your website that's called the Big Hit Protection Program, I think.
Right.
And so I'm really interested in learning more about that, but also how do you kind of figure out how much the royalties are worth? Is it customized? Is it an algorithm?
Yeah, it's an algorithm. So it's based on data. So right now we are looking at 2 years worth of history. So as I sort of said earlier, we're buying a portion of your back catalog if you're an artist, and we're looking at 2 years worth of history of a track, and then the algorithm is looking at that, and then based on the data and how that track has been performing, we basically make a forecast into the future of how we think that track is going to perform in the future, and then we make an offer, and on our end we're trying to make 10 or 15% a year on the deal. So that's our goal. But obviously we can't guarantee that amount. It could be much lower than that, in which case, as I said before, we take the hit. But the other possibility is it could be much higher than that. Like maybe your track really blows up, and then obviously it would be an annoying situation for the artist, because then they're perhaps giving up more upside than they had initially anticipated. So that's where the big hit protection comes in, because above a certain threshold, we will give you half back. So if it really does blow up, you have some protection that you're not going to end up giving up more upside than you'd anticipated. As I said, because you're only selling a portion of your royalty stream, you have some of that protection anyway, because you're still, like if you sell us 20%, for example, you're still keeping 80%. So if it does blow up, no matter what, you're still keeping 80% of that. But as I said, the big hit protection does provide a little bit of extra comfort for artists who are worried, well, what happens if, my track is obviously it's fairly rare, but, you never know. And, you want some protection against that.
Wow. Totally data-driven. I love it. And, it's innovative, and it really sounds fair. It sounds like...
that's our goal.
Yeah. I think, again, just from an outsider looking in, it sounds very reasonable. It sounds like a very sound option or solution for funding music in some way, and I still am wrapping my brain around the investment piece, which just sounds absolutely amazing as well. Talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned earlier that, there's the funding piece, but there are also some other services that you all provide. What are those?
So the main thing we provide right now is funding, but the thing we've realized is that in order to make those predictions about how music will perform in the future, we've had to collect a lot of data and create a lot of useful insights in order to make those predictions. And it occurred to us that those insights and that data would also be very useful to artists. They would like to see that. They would like to. So, for example, we haven't rolled out much of this yet, but our goal is that we would give additional insights to customers. Things like, for example, we've noticed that music like yours does very well in Seattle, say, or Atlanta. So you might think about advertising in these markets, or when touring comes back, touring in these markets. So we can provide you these additional insights, and so that's something that we're in the process of working on right now. But we'll eventually hope to provide more and more of those insights, so that in addition to funding, the artists will have a portal where they'll be able to see some of the insights that we're using in order to make our calculations.
Wow, that's great. I mean, that certainly helps. Sounds like it helps from the business planning, strategic planning, as well as the branding perspective for the artist. So not just the dollars, but also the data to help support and leverage additional dollars. Very, 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 very cool. Very cool. So if you're just tuning in to Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize, this is Andrea John Baptiste, and we are on today with John Fonge, who is CEO and co-founder of the Music Fund. And John told us that if you want to learn more, if you want to see if your catalog is viable for funding, go to themusic.fund, themusic.fund, and there you can get all the information you need about the Music Fund and the viability of your catalog. We're talking data and dollars. So, John, I saw that you guys fund up to $50,000. Have you funded up to $50,000?
I think the most we've done so far is $20,000 or $30,000. We have the $50,000 limit is because we are trying to create a diversified portfolio of artists that we've given money to. Because as I said earlier, our business model is to make a large number of small bets. So we don't want to end up putting too much of this in one artist. Although as we get bigger, we do hope to increase those amounts.
Very, very, very cool. What is a cool project that you've seen from someone you funded? What have they used the dollars to do? Anything exciting and interesting?
Yeah, one of the big things we've seen is people using the money to fund YouTube videos to promote their music, and so it's a lot of fun to see some of those
Very
YouTube videos. Yeah, and you can see some of the artists who've done that on. If you go to our website, there's a couple of artists that we've featured that we've given money to, and they talk a little bit about how they've used money. But some artists will just use money for more mundane things, and that's fine. Like maybe they just need to pay their rent so they can keep on making music, make their next album or whatever it is. But yeah, some of the obviously the things where people make videos or buy into tours or things like that, are some of those things that are very exciting to see.
Very, very, very cool. And so who should not use the Music Fund?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, I would like to say that most people I think should use the Music Fund. So before I answer that, I do want to say that even people, like, one of the things we often get is that people who have record deals think that they shouldn't use the Music Fund because they may have given up their copyrights to a label or something like that. But anybody who has a revenue stream from streaming can use the Music Fund. I guess the one case that is difficult is if somebody already has an advance, and so they're already paying off an advance, and so they may have streaming revenue, but the streaming revenue is all going to some previous advance that they took. So that case is probably the one where it is going to be difficult. And I guess also for people who don't have much history, as I said, we do currently look at artists with at least we buy tracks with at least two years worth of history, which is quite long, and we will shorten that over time as we sort of improve the model that does the predictions. But so artists, if they've only been going for like 6 months or something, then they would have to wait a little bit until they'd built up that history.
Gotcha. Wow, seems pretty straightforward, a very innovative approach using data to go ahead and get those dollars. I mean, wonderful. So in this time of COVID-19, where we're still kind of teetering in terms of do's, don'ts, and things are consistently changing and rolling out, have you seen an impact in maybe applications or just an overall impact in your service delivery? How has the pandemic impacted the Music Fund?
Yeah, so it because a lot of what we're doing is based around streaming revenue. We did see a small dip in streaming revenue when the pandemic first started, and we think that's probably mostly due to people having their sort of commute patterns disrupted. I think lots of people like to listen to music, on their way to work or something like that. So we definitely saw some changes there, but I think that sort of bounced back to some extent as people have found kind of new routines, and obviously music is an important part of most of our lives, and so I think people have found other times and other ways to incorporate music back into their lives, so that they, it's an ongoing thing for them, and so we have seen the streaming sort of come back. Obviously, the biggest thing for artists is the touring income has been a big, it's obviously tours have taken a big hit, and so we have, that's obviously, we hate to see artists losing revenue income, but it has increased the relative importance of streaming, which is sort of where we're focused on giving people money based on their streaming revenue. So we have seen more interest from artists who are looking to get funding during this difficult time based on their streaming revenue, so that they can fund projects that don't require touring, for example, making new music or making videos or those kind of things.
Interesting. It's impacted everyone everywhere in some way, shape, or form, huh?
Yes,
so it's not definitely. From the creation, it's the distribution, it's the consumption. I didn't think about the consumption patterns. But I'm eager to see what our data will look like. I thought about, particularly for online listenership, will it go up or has it gone up? Because we're drive time programming. So just interesting. Wow. A couple of aha moments today on Synergy as we have talked with John Funge of the Music Fund. John, before we head out, be sure to tell folks how to keep up with you and the Music Fund one more time.
Yeah, as I said, the best way is to go to our website, themusic.fund, or you can follow us on Twitter. We're at the Music Fund. And you can sign up. As I said, our service is completely automated, so you can sign up and give it a go.
Thank you. And so as we wind down our time today on Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize, we have been talking with our folks from Blocker as well as the Music Fund, John Funge, as we've talked about data and dollars. Very, very important resources and tools in the music industry. This is Andrea John Baptiste, and our time has come to an end. And if you want to stay connected, please keep up with us on Instagram at Synergy Radio Show and on Twitter, Live with Synergy. And we look forward to chatting with you next week. But before I go, I have to say, hey, Mama Leonie, hey, Diva J, Gianna Ninyue, Ernestine, Dion, Rishma, Don Daddy, Diane, Jeff, Gigi, Ross Indio, John, Mweza, Mina, and Maleka. Stay well, stay healthy, live in synergy. Bye.
Hey, synchronizers. You know I'm always filled with the backstories, but I don't do shameless plugs or the ask very often. So, this is how you know it's pretty important to me, right? Well, I am a founding funder of an organization called Island Space. And Island Space is dedicated to creating an archive, a repository of information, resources, artifacts for the Caribbean American, about the Caribbean American experience. And so I'm a founding funder of what they're calling the Island Archives Caribbean Museum, and you can be one too. All I'm asking is that you give $10 or more today or in the near future and become part of history in the making. It will be the first ever unified Caribbean museum celebrating Caribbean culture. And when I say unified and when I say diverse, I'm talking the entire diaspora. So no, don't think it's just all about Jamaica and Trinidad and Cuba and the larger, and Hispaniola, right? And the larger or only English-speaking parts of the Caribbean. No, 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 no. And that's in my Belizean accent. Island Space is a space for everybody from the Caribbean as we talk about our important contributions to this nation as well as our rich and diverse history. So to donate $10 or more, please visit islandspacefl.org. Again, that's islandspacefl.org and become a founding funder. Please. That's our time. That's our chat. Now it's time to call it a wrap. Tune in next week at 5 for another edition of Synergy Live, where music, business, and culture synchronize. This is your girl, Andrea John Baptiste. Follow me, follow us on Live with Synergy on Instagram and Twitter. Synergy is a production of Axum Management Capabilities, produced by JT the Believer.